I want you to just mentally scan your calendar for the upcoming week.
Oh, that can be a terrifying exercise for some people.
Right. Just look at all those 30-minute blocks, the ones dedicated to like a quick coffee chat or a meeting where someone just wants to pick your brain.
Yeah, the classic pick your brain meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you isolate those specific blocks, I mean, how many of them actually move the needle on your professional goals?
Usually very few.
And how many are you secretly dreading because you just know they're going to completely drain your bandwidth?
Yeah, it's really a systemic issue, especially for anyone who's reached a certain level of, competence in their field.
For sure.
Because we operate in this business environment that just aggressively champions networking. Like it's an absolute good no matter what.
More is better, right? That's the mindset.
The prevailing wisdom is that more connections automatically equal more opportunities. But in practice, unchecked networking kind of functions like a leak in your cognitive gas tank.
A leak? Wow.
Yeah, you just expend all this energy without actually generating any forward momentum.
So true. You sit down, you nod, you dispense your free consulting, and then you leave the interaction wondering why you just sacrificed an hour of deep work.
And it's just a terrible return on investment.
It really is. So today, we're taking a deep dive into a masterclass on opportunity management. We've got this really comprehensive set of materials that details the architecture of how to navigate, filter, and really command your professional interactions.
It's a great set of sources, very practical.
Yeah, and the mission here is to transition you from playing defense against all those incoming meeting requests to, acting as the strategic director of your own time.
Which is where everyone wants to be.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where is the structural flaw in how most people approach a new professional interaction?
Well, the structural flaw is that people treat networking as contact accumulation, right? Rather than focus protection.
Focus protection, I like that.
Yeah, managing opportunities effectively really requires a total paradigm shift. Like every interaction that actually yields a high leverage outcome, it starts long before the calendar invite is even sent.
Wait, really? Before you even set the meeting?
Exactly. It is entirely dependent on your upfront positioning. You see, usually when someone asks what you do, you offer a static noun. You say, I am a project manager, or I am an instructor.
Right, just a title.
And that framework is entirely passive. It forces the other person to guess your utility. Like, what can you actually do for them?
So what's the alternative then?
The more effective approach is using what the materials call a dynamic positioning statement. So it's an inner business card. The formula relies on action. You say, I help a specific target achieve a specific result through a specific methodology.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that immediately shifts the burden of interpretation.
Exactly.
Like instead of saying, I'm a digital marketer, which, let's be honest, means 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people.
Oh, absolutely.
You say something like, I help mid-sized SaaS companies reduce user churn through behavioral email sequencing.
Yes, perfect example.
You aren't just stating your title. You're declaring your exact utility in the marketplace.
And defining that utility requires you to actually answer 3 foundational questions. And you have to do this before you ever step into a meeting.
Okay, what are the questions?
So first, you must identify your current location in your own professional journey. Like, are you trying to scale? Are you pivoting? Or are you just in a learning phase right now?
Right, makes sense. And the second?
Second, you have to articulate the precise value you bring to the specific individual you're meeting with. What is your actual value to them?
Okay, and the third?
Third, and this is probably the most crucial, you need to define the exact result you want from the conversation.
Because if you don't know what you want.
Right. If you lack a defined objective, you basically surrender the steering wheel to whoever you're talking to.
Which brings to mind the mechanics of medical triage, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, think about a triage nurse at a trauma center. Their entire job is rapid categorization. When someone walks through the door, they don't treat them all with this standard baseline of care.
Right. Of course not.
The patient with cardiac symptoms goes to a completely different ward at a completely different speed than the patient with just a sprained ankle.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You diagnose the intent and severity before allocating your resources. But I do want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Doesn't categorizing people like this, rapidly sorting them into buckets and deciding what they want from you in the first few minutes, doesn't that run the risk of being a bit, overly clinical or transactional?
It is a common critique, for sure. But what's fascinating here is that rigorous categorization is fundamentally an act of mutual respect.
Respect for their time.
Yes, in yours. It prevents the friction of misaligned expectations. You see, when someone reaches out, they are driven by a specific, often unspoken motivation. And if you fail to diagnose that motivation, you're going to respond with the wrong playbook. So you have to listen for the underlying verbal cues.
Like what kind of cues?
Well, if they use phrasing like, I'd love to hear how you broke into the industry, their motivation is clearly learning. They're seeking a roadmap from you.
Oh, okay. And if they say something else?
If they say, we are struggling with our Q3 deployment, then they are a potential client. They have a problem you might be able to solve.
Got it.
And if they suggest, hey, our audiences overlap significantly, then they're a potential partner. They want to combine resources.
Okay, that makes the danger of misdiagnosis really clear. Because if you don't categorize the interaction, you might start giving this, high-pressure sales pitch to someone who simply wanted some brief mentorship.
Exactly. Or the opposite, right?
Yeah, conversely, you treat a high-level potential investor like just a peer you're casually brainstorming with, and you completely miss the window to present a serious vision.
And that is the exact mechanism of failure in these chats. Categorization just ensures you are speaking the same language.
Right.
So once you've established your own internal positioning and you've diagnosed their motivation, then you transition into the actual conversation. And the data surrounding these initial interactions is actually pretty stark.
What does the research say?
According to the sources, the trajectory of the first call determined 80% of the long-term relationship's outcome.
Wait, 80%? That is an overwhelming anchor.
It really is.
I mean, that means the die is cast before the follow-up email is even drafted.
It proves that default behavior leads to default outcomes. If you don't actively architecture the call, it just devolves into a polite, meandering exchange of pleasantries that goes absolutely nowhere.
Right, just talking about the weather.
Exactly. So to counter this, there's a distinct 5-stage framework you should apply to these initial meetings. It's known as the CLARE method.
CLARE. Okay, let's break that down. The first phase is C, which stands for connect, right?
Yes.
And that one is pretty straightforward. It's just the initial 2 to 3 minutes of rapport building. You humanize the interaction before moving into the business stuff.
Right, you still have to be a person.
But the second phase, L, for chap. Listen, this is where the structural leverage really begins. Because the directive here is that you must let the other party speak first.
Yes, that is crucial.
You deploy these open-ended questions like, what was the catalyst for you wanting to chat today? Or what is the primary bottleneck in your current project?
And letting them establish the baseline is a massive strategic advantage. By speaking first, they reveal their priorities, their pain points, and really their level of sophistication.
Yeah, you gather all the intel.
Exactly, which flows naturally into the third phase, A, for assess. So while they're answering your opening questions, you're actively evaluating their stage of development.
You're probing to see if they've attempted to solve this problem before, right?
Right, or if they're literally just starting to look at it. You are calculating whether a genuine fit exists based on real data rather than just assumptions.
And once you've gathered that intelligence, you transition to the R, which is respond.
Yes.
And this is basically the deployment of your inner business card. You reflect back what you've heard, you introduce your dynamic positioning, and you propose a potential direction.
That's exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The final phase. The E in the framework. And clearly.
Oh, this is the hardest part for most people.
The materials are incredibly rigid on this point. They say you must either lock in a highly specific next step or you must definitively close the door on the collaboration.
Yes. And the failure to end, clearly, is the primary source of all that calendar bloat we talked about. Professionals are just terrified of abrupt endings, so they rely on the phrase, let's keep in touch.
Oh, the worst phrase.
It is a meaningless pleasantry, and all it does is create an open loop.
It functions exactly like a software application left running in the background of your phone.
Oh, I love that comparison.
Right. Even if you aren't actively using the app, it's quietly draining your battery. It's consuming processing power.
Right.
And a vague professional relationship does the exact same thing to your cognitive bandwidth.
It really does.
You have to either bring the application to the foreground and actually use it, like by scheduling a concrete project, or you need to force quit the app. Leaving it running in the background serves no one.
That is a perfect articulation of the cognitive cost. But forcing an outcome requires you to know what a good outcome actually looks like, right?
Sure.
Recognizing that a runway is open doesn't necessarily mean you should land your plane there. You have to evaluate whether the collaboration is a strategic fit or just a resource trap disguised as an opportunity.
Which brings us to the collaboration matrix in the sources. Because evaluating an opportunity isn't just about whether you, enjoy hanging out with the person. It requires structural alignment.
Yes.
And the optimal fit requires three distinct pillars, right? The first being complementary strengths.
Right. And this is a point that frequently trips up even really seasoned professionals. We are naturally drawn to people who mirror our own competencies.
Oh, for sure. Like attracts like.
Exactly. If you're a high-level visionary, you enjoy talking to other visionaries because the conversation is just exciting. But structurally, two visionaries collaborating is a total disaster because nobody is operating the machinery.
Right. Who's actually doing the work?
Exactly. A high-leverage partnership requires someone who is strong exactly where you are weak. You need an operator to complement the visionary.
Okay, so that's the first pillar. The second pillar is a shared long-term vision. The daily execution can differ, but the ultimate destination has to be identical.
Absolutely.
And the third pillar is fast action. You're looking for a behavioral pattern where discussion is immediately followed by execution. The friction comes when you encounter the opposite, right? People who just want to extract value without contributing, or people who suffer from chronic analysis paralysis.
Right, the ones who just talk and talk.
But the sources go deeper than just defining a bad fit. They outline incredibly specific red flags to watch for during that initial CLA process.
Yes, and these warning signs generally fall into two categories. You've got communication flags and behavioral flags.
Okay, tell me about the communication ones.
So on the communication front, a massive indicator of a toxic opportunity is the try first, talk later approach.
What does that mean exactly?
This is the counterpart who expects you to deliver upfront strategic work or, intellectual property without any formal commitment on their end.
Oh, like doing a huge proposal for free.
Exactly. Another red flag is artificial time pressure. Like if someone claims an opportunity will vanish by tomorrow just to force a quick yes, they are actively attempting to bypass your critical thinking.
That makes sense.
And evasiveness is also a key indicator. If you ask a direct, granular question about their current resource allocation or their past metrics, and they respond with generalized industry jargon, they are hiding a structural deficit.
Yeah, that's a huge warning sign. Then you also have the behavioral flags, which are often more visceral, right?
Definitely.
Like chronic disrespect for your time, logging into a call 10 minutes late with just a casual excuse, or rescheduling at the last possible minute.
Oh, I hate that.
Right. There's also the conversational narcissist. The person who spends the entire 30 minutes detailing how the partnership will accelerate their goals without ever asking about your ROI.
Yeah, total one-way street.
But the sources say the most glaring behavioral flag is their reaction to a boundary. Like, if you decline a minor request or set a constraint on your availability and their immediate response is defensive or passive-aggressive, you're basically seeing a preview of how they will handle real conflict.
Oh, 100%.
But I want to explore the gray area here. What happens when your logical assessment and your intuition clash?
What do you mean?
Like, the counterpart has the right credentials, the funding is verified, the matrix aligns, but your gut feeling insists something is structurally wrong. If my gut says run, but on paper they look great, what should I do?
Well, the material provides a highly effective protocol for that exact dilemma. The golden rule of red flags is not to immediately terminate the interaction, but to systematically verify the friction point.
Okay, so don't just run away.
Right. Because intuition is often just subconscious pattern recognition. Your brain is noticing an incongruence that your conscious mind hasn't quite articulated yet.
So you don't just ghost them based on a bad vibe. You actually test the system.
Exactly. You use the red flag as a trigger to halt the forward momentum and ask a highly targeted, clarifying question.
Give me an example.
So if your intuition is flagging their financial transparency, you pause the conversation and state, in order to accurately scope this, I need to see the exact budget breakdown for the next 2 quarters.
And then you just watch how they react.
Yeah. Yes. Their reaction to the verification test is your answer. If they openly provide the data, then your intuition was likely just picking up on a minor miscommunication. But if they deflect, evade, or worse, attempt to make you feel unreasonable for asking,
then the red flag is verified.
Precisely.
And once you verify that red flag, the path is obvious. You have to kill the opportunity.
Which introduces the phase that causes the most anxiety for professionals, I think.
Oh, yeah. saying no.
The actual deployment of the word no.
Yeah, the anxiety really stems from viewing a decline as an aggressive act or like a personal rejection. It needs to be reframed entirely.
So.
Declining an opportunity is an advanced professional skill. It is the primary mechanism by which you protect your capacity to do deep, meaningful work.
Because if you say yes to everything,
When you indiscriminately agree to everything, your commitments lose all their structural integrity. And there are 4 distinct scenarios where declining is not just an option, but an absolute necessity. Okay, the first scenario is the most obvious, right? An ethical clash. If the methodology required violates your baseline principles, the downstream revenue is completely irrelevant.
absolutely.
The second is a severe value imbalance. If the architecture of the deal requires you to shoulder 80% of the risk and labor for like 20% of the equity, and they refuse to restructure it, you just walk.
Yes, walk away.
The third scenario is developmental. The other party simply lacks the maturity or infrastructure to execute at your level. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a partnership. It would basically be a tutoring session.
Right. And the fourth scenario is perhaps the most difficult for high achievers to internalize.
What's that?
Declining because you legitimately lack the capacity to execute at your own standard. Taking on a project when your bandwidth is already saturated guarantees a mediocre deliverable.
Right.
And a polite, firm decline preserves your reputation, whereas delivering subpar work destroys it.
And the mechanics of how you deliver that decline really matter. The research provides specific scripts, focusing heavily on what not to do.
Yes, the scripts are great.
Like the most common error is relying on, I'm incredibly busy right now, as your shield. Because claiming you are busy implies that your lack of availability is just a temporary scheduling issue.
It's an invitation to try again later.
Exactly. It basically invites the person to follow up in 3 weeks. Instead, you need to offer a structural reason. You state, this alignment doesn't fit my current strategic focus because of my commitment to scaling X.
It completely removes the ambiguity.
Right. What's another misstep?
Well, another frequent misstep is utilizing false deferrals to soften the blow. So telling someone, let me think about it and get back to you, when you have already internally decided to pass, is just a breach of professional respect.
Oh, it's just stringing them along.
It creates another one of those open cognitive loops for both parties. If you legitimately require more data to make a decision, you must outline the exact parameters. You say, I cannot commit until I see the finalized Q2 user retention metrics.
Okay. And in this scenario where the counterpart just isn't operating at the required level of sophistication yet, arrogance is a massive liability. Right.
Oh, hugely.
Like telling someone they aren't advanced enough to work with you burns a bridge that might actually be valuable in 5 years. The proper protocol is to provide a developmental hurdle.
Right.
You tell them the prerequisite for this kind of collaboration is mastering X. Once you have that infrastructure in place, I'd be happy to revisit this. You give them a map rather than just locking the door on them.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the root cause of almost all failed collaborations is a misunderstanding of the staging process.
The staging process.
Yeah. Professionals routinely attempt to bypass the necessary friction of trust building. They meet someone at a conference, have a really great 30-minute chat, and immediately attempt to launch a joint venture.
Wow, yeah.
They are confusing the presence of rapport with the presence of operational compatibility.
It's basically the equivalent of trying to deploy untested code directly to your primary user base.
Yeah.
You don't launch a massive software update without running it through a sandbox environment first. Like if there's a fatal bug in the code, you want it to break the sandbox, not your entire operating system.
Exactly.
Or like dating. Right. You don't go from a casual coffee date straight to signing a 30-year mortgage together. You have to take a weekend trip first. You need a way to stress test the partnership where the blast radius is actually contained.
And that contained stress test is what the sources call a pilot project.
Okay, the pilot test.
Yeah. Before any long-term contracts are signed or significant resources are merged, you design a micro-collaboration. It needs to be a task with real stakes, but of very limited duration.
Like what?
Well, if you are considering merging marketing agencies, you don't sign a partnership agreement right away. You agree to co-author a single comprehensive white paper.
I see. And during that pilot, you are running diagnostics on absolutely everything.
Precisely. You are watching their operational cadence. Like, do they hit their internal deadlines? What is the baseline quality of their first draft? But most importantly, you are monitoring their emotional regulation when friction occurs. When the client pushes back or the data doesn't align, Do they become collaborative problem solvers, or do they become defensive and assign blame?
Wow, that's incredibly revealing.
If the code breaks in the beta test, you have literally saved yourself years of corporate entanglement.
Okay, so you've diagnosed their motivation, you've executed the CLARE framework, you've navigated the red flags, and set up a pilot test. The final layer of opportunity management really dictates how you physically and tonally occupy the space during these interactions.
Right, your vibe.
Yeah, your external signaling, your vibe, has to perfectly synchronize with that internal business card you created.
Because incongruence between your stated positioning and your behavioral signaling instantly triggers distrust.
It just feels off.
Right. And the materials outline 3 distinct operational modes here. If you are entering the dynamic as the expert-like, you're the person providing the roadmap. Your external signaling must be anchored in calm restraint.
Calm restraint.
Yes. Experts do not rush to fill silence. They ask probing questions, they speak at a very measured pace, and they do not over-explain their credentials. Because rushing or dominating the airtime signals insecurity, not authority.
Okay. Conversely, if the dynamic is an equal partnership, your signaling should be highly direct and radically transparent.
Exactly.
You bypass the posturing and state, I'm going to be entirely blunt about our bottlenecks so we can determine if our resources actually align. It just establishes a peer-to-peer operational tempo.
Yes.
And if you are entering as the learner, your signaling must be characterized by proactive humility. You do not feign expertise. You openly state, my team lacks the historical data on this specific market segment. I am here to understand your methodology.
Which is very refreshing, honestly.
It is. So what does this all mean for the concept of playing your cards close to the vest? There is a pervasive theory in business that maintaining strategic ambiguity, being intentionally vague about your goals or resources, gives you negotiating leverage. Is there ever a tactical advantage to being vague?
The consensus on strategic ambiguity is definitive. It is a deeply flawed strategy for long-term growth.
Really?
Yeah. Intentional vagueness is usually a defense mechanism disguised as a tactic. It signals to high-level operators that you either do not know what you want, or you just lack the operational confidence to ask for it. Clarity is the ultimate driver of credibility.
So the idea of keeping your options open by not committing to a stance is actually closing doors with top-tier talent.
Absolutely. The only acceptable time to withhold a definitive answer is when you legitimately lack the empirical data required to make an informed choice.
Right. If you just don't know yet.
And even in that scenario, your communication should still be radically clear. You state, I am withholding a decision because I am missing variable X and Y. Employing vagueness just because you are conflict-averse and afraid to say no, well, that damages your reputation as a decisive operator.
Clarity builds credibility. That is a principle to anchor on. Wow, we have covered an immense amount of architectural ground today.
We really have.
We started by dismantling the static job title in favor of the dynamic positioning statement, that inner business card.
Right.
We examined the necessity of triage, diagnosing the motivations of the people entering your orbit. We broke down the mechanics of the first call using the CLARE method, specifically focusing on the power dynamics of listening first and the necessity of closing that cognitive loop at the end.
Crucial step.
We explored the collaboration matrix, the psychology of verifying red flags, the structural deployment of the word no, and the critical importance of utilizing a sandbox pilot test before ever integrating your resources.
It is a rigorous operating system, and installing it requires deliberate practice.
Yeah, it does.
The immediate application for you listening today is twofold. First, spend 10 minutes drafting your own dynamic positioning statement. Get that inner business card ready.
Love that.
Second, during your next 3 professional interactions, actively run the triage protocol in your head. Do not just participate in the conversation. Observe the underlying motivations that are driving it.
It shifts you from being a passive participant to being the director of the interaction.
It fundamentally alters your vantage point. But, this raises an important question, one that serves as the psychological undercurrent for this entire methodology.
What's that?
Oh. Well, we analyze opportunity management through the lens of controlling external variables, right? Like managing other people's time, filtering their requests, assessing their red flags. But the ultimate utility of this framework is actually internal. It is a system for managing your own ego.
Managing your ego. That is a fascinating pivot.
Think about it. Consider the psychology behind a bad yes. Choosing to decline a highly prestigious opportunity, like a project with a massive brand name attached, just because the collaboration matrix proves it's a structural mismatch, that requires radical self-honesty.
It really does. It's hard to say no to prestige.
Exactly. Admitting that you lack the bandwidth to execute a lucrative contract, rather than just cashing the check and delivering a mediocre product that requires subordinating your ego to your long-term reputation. We often cling to terrible opportunities simply because our ego enjoys the validation of being desired. I would urge you to evaluate your current calendar right now. What specific projects or relationships are your ego forcing you to hold on to when your analytical mind knows you should have terminated them months ago?
That is a phenomenal diagnostic question to leave on. Audit your calendar, identify the ego-driven commitments, and aggressively prune them. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Our hope is that you can re-enter your professional ecosystem equipped with the frameworks to protect your focus, command your interactions, and permanently eliminate the dreaded, aimless coffee chat. We'll see you next time.